And that lack of inner peace sadly starts with, I don't want to soberly look at the world as it is. I want to escape. We back with another reflection on that daily Vedantic. And today's reflection is on the dark underbelly of pursuing pleasure in the world around us. Now, we know and talk about this quite openly in our culture that we shouldn't just chase pleasure all the time. We know intuitively that that's probably not advisable, because the clear example where it goes way off the tracks would be pursuing drugs. There is a price to that high of that cocaine, that shot of heroin. It's inescapable. If we could invent a drug that did not have a price to it, if we could invent a pleasure that did not have a price to it, had no hangover to the 5, 6, 15 drinks on a Saturday night, by God, we would. But it doesn't exist. But we rarely take it an explicit step further than just these observations that we make of knowing there is quite the hell of a hangover on the other side of pursuits like that. But this philosophy within Vedanta makes it quite explicit in saying that this world is a world of opposites. Profit implies loss. Pleasure implies pain. Joy implies sorrow. You can almost switch out implies to will lead to. It just is the nature of the universe. And like I said, we know this instinctively, but it's never said explicitly. At least I had never heard it said explicitly before coming across the concepts within Vedanta, that the world is opposites. Where that's powerful is that in the midst of pain, you know that, well, there is pleasure coming. It is the yin-yang symbol, which, if you don't know that the history of the yin-yang symbol is that it's not meant to be just a circle of black and white. It is actually an aerial view of a mountain, of a ridge. You have a dark side and a light side. As the sun rises or sets, one side is the dark side and one side is the well-lit side. You can't have a mountain with one side. If you want a really well-lit side, if you want a beautiful sunrise, you're going to have a sunset. You cannot have a mountain with one side. That's how starkly you can think about the world as opposites. The same way you can't have a mountain with just one side, you can't just have profits and no losses. You can't just have joy and no sorrow. You can't just have pleasure and no pain. And this philosophy takes it even further when it says, when we seek that which is pleasurable, when we're just seeking that, not only is there pain on the other side, but you can expect it based on the pleasure you feel at first touch, first taste. The quantum of pleasure in the beginning, that's going to represent the quantum of pain on the other side. And yes, this is sobering, and it sounds like I'm preaching some ascetic approach. This approach is very, very aligned with the middle path, as the Buddhists say. So this philosophy is not preaching one extreme or the other. But it does offer a realistic approach to navigating the world. And it does so in one of my favorite 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita that point to this by saying, that which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. And that which is like poison in the beginning is like nectar in the end. Another term for Vedanta is Sanatana Dharma, which means eternal principles. So these eternal principles within this philosophy, it's just a list of principles that you can apply and should apply through your own reason and rationale analysis in your own life to say, okay, is that accurate? Does that actually help me get what I want? Is that an accurate description of my experiences? And this one, I did not want to believe. I bring this one up quite often in these list of principles because it's as powerful as it is simple. It's as profound as it is practical of maybe any of the principles within Vedanta. That which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the beginning. Some translations are, and that which is like sweetness in the beginning is like poison or bitterness in the end. But that which is sweet to the touch, taste, is like nectar. Give some elbow room. Back up. Just observe and question, is this going to be like nectar in the end? Or maybe there's some truth to that kooky principle that I heard on that YouTube or that podcast once that, oh, because this tastes so good, because this feels so good right now, there's going to be a price on the other side. And I know that this principle can be sobering. And it's quite the selfish delusion to want to not be sober. Many times in life, the last thing you want to do is be sober, looking at things as they are. That's why we chase escape left and right. That's why we have more people dying from self-induced harm, things like drugs or suicide, than we have around the world, than we have people dying from all violence and conflict combined. More people dying from a lack of inner peace than we have. We are closer to world peace than we are to inner peace. And that lack of inner peace sadly starts with, I don't want to soberly look at the world as it is. I want to escape. And then you chase another hit of that, another hit. So I get that many people don't want to look at things soberly. But the beautiful thing is, when we do look at things soberly, we don't delude ourselves with, well, this is really sweet in the beginning, and I bet it's going to be sweet in the end if I just keep doing more and more and more and more and more of this. Watch more and more porn, cultivate more and more of addiction to sugar. You can live a deluded life thinking that it gets better and better, and then sweetness just grows on the other side. Or when given this brief window of clarity, of potentially taking a concept like this and applying it to our lives and saying, maybe there's some truth to that. Let me just explore this concept for the next 2 or 3 days. Are the things that are really sweet in the beginning, is there a price on the other side? The beautiful thing is, if that ends up being the case, the things that are sweet in the beginning are like poison in the end. What's beautiful is this philosophy tells us how to get a life of sweetness, of nectar all around you. And it's through the consumption, digestion, the pursuit of the things that feel like poison in the beginning. The price of pleasure isn't really about what happens in the hangover after a night of binge drinking. That's the black market value. That's the wrong price. The real price of pleasure is up front. It's the sacrifice and surrender into the striving and struggling in the beginning. That's the price towards generating more and more pleasure on the other side. Generating more and more energy within us. Because the definition within this philosophy, as I say quite often, the definition of right action within this philosophy is that which generates energy. Turns out doing the hard thing in the beginning. Going to the gym, even though you hate it for the first 4 or 5 weeks when it feels awful to you, and then you start to taste, oh, this is why people get addicted to this. They love it. They're not 5 years in hating going. They actually, you start to develop a rhythm of really loving it because of the way it makes you feel. Having those hard conversations with a relationship in your life, with someone at work, man, immense peace is right on the other side of that. You do it 4, 5, 6 times and you realize, oh God, that is actually a pretty minimal price to a great relationship on the other side. A great working relationship, great personal relationship on the other side. And the opposite is true. Try to beeline it straight to pleasure and never have those hard conversations. Never do the hard thing. Never go to the gym and see if it generates energy within you or if it dissipates energy within you. And the last thing I'll say about the world as opposites. It's not something to where you fear, oh, things are going well. Okay, something bad's going to happen. To expect the worst is to be a pessimist. To be prepared for the worst, that's to be a philosopher. You don't expect, things are going great, so let me expect them to go south. You just prepare for them to go south. While you're raking in profits, you prepare for a rainy day. While you are in a groove, you prepare for, okay, let me reinforce these principles while life is going well so that I can tap into them when it gets a bit shaky. As I say in the podcast quite often, the optimist sees the light at the end of the tunnel. The pessimist sees the tunnel, but the realist sees the tunnel, the light, and the next tunnel. Sees the world as opposite, sees the world as it is, not as we want it to be. Sees that there is no such thing as a one-sided mountain. And I think most helpfully sees it, when something tastes really good in the beginning, literally or metaphorically. Create some elbow room. See if there's going to be a price on the other side, but equally and even more powerfully, this is going to be hard in the beginning. Great. Good. Perfect. That is how it should be, because that's how you get nectar on the other side. That's today's reflection on the daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.